Man, I love Star Wars. The universe is so unique. All the fantastic characters like Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Princess Leia, Dudbolt are so well realized, and you can really tell that creative, passionate people worked on bringing this universe to life, and they put so much heart into it. But you know what I love more than Star Wars? Star Wars The Clone Wars. This is probably my favorite series, hands down, and no, it's not just the fact that it's Star Wars, but that might have something to do with it. The Clone Wars takes all the stuff that was in the prequels and expands upon it to the point where you can't look at this stuff the same way. Now, I'd be lying to you if I said the show is perfect. It does have its fair share of misses and lackluster episodes. But I'm telling you, man, when this show hits the mark, it hits it hard. It's dramatic and exciting, it's funny, it's insightful, and once again, it's got that heart. You know that the people that made this show really care about it by the way they brought these worlds and characters to life in such a meaningful way, and I fucking love it. And, well, I'm sure you can tell by the title of this video, I made some more figures from the show, that being Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka Tano. Again. But they're different. I made them in their outfits they wear throughout most of the show, that being from like season 3 through 6. So let's start with the figure that I finished back in May. Yes, May. I've been working on these figures since May. Fuck me. That figure being Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is such a great character. He's got so much charisma and screen presence, you gotta love him. His interactions with Anakin and Ahsoka got a lot of dad energy and can be summed up with, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. Also, his relationship with Duchess Satine is great. Obi-Wan dealing with an old love interest is a really interesting idea. He's so dedicated to being a Jedi, having him have to deal with his emotions for this woman that he truly cares about is really well done and bittersweet, and it makes for a lot of fun interactions.
For a woman sworn to non-violence, you don't seem troubled that I could have been killed back there.
But you weren't?
Just in general, he's a sarcastic son of a bitch, especially when he's in the face of death.
I like your new legs. They make you look taller.
One of the biggest reasons I like Obi-Wan so much is how resilient he is. This man goes through so much shit, so many horrible things happen to him, but at the end of the day, he gets up and keeps going.
He hopes tomorrow will be better. He may not be able to do that himself, but he can help those on the right path to do great things.
He is the ideal Jedi Knight. There were two things in particular I wanted to improve upon with this Obi-Wan compared to the last one I did, was to make a better lightsaber hilt and not to sculpt the beard, because that was fucking terrible and did not age well at all. Now, the lightsaber is heavily inspired by Legomatic 9's lightsaber hilt tutorial video, link in the description, but I heavily modified it in my own style.
Not to say Aaron's is bad, but
what I did for my own here was very similar. The bottom section is just a Lego bar piece that I cut to size and then using ProCreate. I sculpted the 4 boxes at the bottom of the pommel along with the lightsaber clip and the ignition switch. The black riveted grip section was cut off a Lego Galaxy Conquest pistol. The thin neck piece of the hilt is just a Lego antenna cut to size. The gold ring in the middle is a Lego bar piece that I drilled a hole into and glued in place. The lightsaber emitter piece is just a Lego one cut off and flipped upside down, exactly how Aaron does it in his tutorial, but I sanded it to be more accurate to how it's supposed to look. I painted it using Model Master's silver. I used black and gold for the small details. I also sanded the blade to a point because I like how that looks. I sculpted the armor on his hands and painted those up in a gloss white. The arms were made using blank white arms so I wouldn't have to paint the white because white paint is a bitch. I traced the gauntlets and elbow pads out with black, and I painted the sleeves in a tan mixture of my own. Pretty sure I used apple barrel khaki with a mix of white. On the left gauntlet, I sculpted the communicator and painted it in dark gray and used some gold for the highlights. On the right arm, I painted the Republic symbol using some yellow and red. I think it's a little crooked, could be straighter, but it does the job. I used some Cape Madness fabric to do the robes on the torso. Those were just cut to size and glued on and painted in that tan mixture, outlined in a darker tan. Painted the undersuit in brown, added the exposed neck, and detailed that with black. The belt is a piece of fabric glued onto the torso and the belt, and that was painted tan. The overbelt was made out of electrical tape painted brown. The belt buckle, lightsaber clip, and the 2 pouches on the front and the one in the back were all sculpted out of ProCreate. The buckle was painted in silver. The lightsaber clip was painted in a dark gray. The 2 pouches on the front were painted in a light red, and the pouch on the back was painted in a lighter brown, and that was all detailed with black. The lower robes is just some more Cape Madness fabric glued onto the belt piece of the figure, wrapping all the way around. On top of that, we have the robes extending down from the torso. Both of those were painted in that tan color and outlined in dark tan. The legs of the figure were painted in a dark tan to represent the pants. The boots were painted in a lighter red, outlined and detailed with black, and the soles of the boots were painted using a lighter brown. The hairpiece for this figure is a modified comb-over piece, or robin hairpiece. I think that's where it originated from. But I sanded quite a bit of the front off. I re-sculpted the front, sculpted onto the sides of the hair and a bit on the back to make it look more how it is in the show. And I painted it in apple barrel chestnut. Now the face, I believe the head was one of the hobbits from the Lord of the Rings sets, not really sure. I erased everything except the eyes on whatever head I used. Sorry, don't remember. I painted the cheekbones, the lines under the eyes, and the squint of the eyebrows, and most importantly, the mole, in my own mixed color. I painted the eyebrows and beard in the same color as the hairpiece, and I used some nutmeg brown for the lines on the beard. And that's it for Obi-Wan. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I'm glad I'm finally able to show it to you. Like I said, I finished this guy back in May, so definitely let me know what you guys think of him in the comments. The next figure we're going to take a look at is Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka is very interesting because she debuted in the Clone Wars. She wasn't in any of the movies. She was made specifically for the show, and people's reaction to her was, well, it was mixed. Who the fuck is this stupid little kid? Anakin didn't have an apprentice. Why have we never heard of her before? How did he possibly have time to train an apprentice between episode 2 and 3, huh? She calls R2 R2-y and Anakin Sky Guy. That's not their names, you dumb bitch! A stupid addition to the Star Wars universe. Just kill her off. Kill her! What the fuck? It's so interesting that people initially hated her. And by people, I specifically mean older fans of Star Wars who were annoyed that one of the characters in the show was a 14-year-old girl. I'm telling you, when I was 9 years old watching the show from the waiting room of the YMCA because my parents refused to pay for cable, I didn't care. I thought she was a fun addition. It's funny to think about because she's considered to be one of the best Star Wars characters now, and it's all thanks to this show. Ahsoka worked well, similar to how Harry Potter works so well. The character grows up with you. When you first see her, she's inexperienced, brash, overly confident, and annoying, like how a 14-year-old would act. Over the course of the show, you see her change from a rambunctious kid into a confident, experienced young adult who learned from those around her. And she has one of my favorite stories in the show, where Ahsoka pretty much has to question everything she ever believed in. She was indoctrinated into this society at a young age without much of a choice, and when she needed them the most, they cast her aside to save face. The show has a lot of moments about being able to make your own decisions and not be dictated by what other people expect from you.
I'm sorry, Master, but I'm not coming back.
And this is one of few stories to make me cry. I'll say it. Even upon rewatches, this shit makes me cry.
Man, when you really think about it, Star Wars is really depressing.
Anyway, I'm really happy with how this figure turned out. I made her long lightsaber out of a Lego bar piece that I cut to size. Then I cut off the top of a Lego lightsaber and sanded it to the shape I wanted. And then using ProCreate, I sculpted all the details on the handle. I sculpted the ignition switch and the 2 black circles. I think one of them is supposed to be a lightsaber clip. I sculpted the pommel with the 8 little boxes, sculpted both buttons by the emitter, and the prongs or the wings, whatever you want to call them. And then I painted that with Model Master Silver, and I used some black and red for the details, and I used some Craft Smart Gold for the switch. And I used Lego's Current Trans Green for the blade, and I sanded that to a point. Her shorter lightsaber was made using a Lego lightsaber that I cut to size and sanded. I sculpted all the detail on the handle, the ignition button, and once again I sculpted the 2 black circles and the pommel with the 8 boxes, and I painted that using the same paint I used for the first one. For the blade, I used one of Lego's older trans green bar pieces. This was their initial green color. It matches Ahsoka's yellowish green shorter blade perfectly, and I cut that to size and sanded it to a point. I painted her hands in a darker red and sealed those with Model Master's Lusterless Flat. I used a pair of orange arms for the arms. Her van braces were painted in a dark red. The back section was painted in more of a maroon color, and that was outlined with black. I painted these 3 gold buckles on both arms. On her left arm, I sculpted the communicator, painted that in the darker gray, and used some gold for the highlights. I painted her armbands in dark red. Those were not fun. Trying to get those diamond shapes to be as straight as possible was a pain in the ass. I sanded the torso to be flush with the hip piece, and then I added some curves to give it a more feminine look. I painted her gold necklace. Underneath that, you can see the outline of her collarbone. I painted the exposed skin on her chest and on her shoulders. And on the back, I used a darker orange to paint the bone structure on her back. I also outlined her abdomen and chest. I painted the belts in a light red and made the belts out of electrical tape. Now, some people consider electrical tape to be too aggressive.
A lot of people use electrical tape, but E-tape is a little bit too aggressive.
Dumb bitch, what the fuck is that even supposed to mean?
The belt buckle, the 2 cylinders, and the lightsaber clips, along with the pouch on the back, were made out of ProCreate. I painted the belt buckle in silver and dry brushed it with some gold. The cylinders collars were painted silver, the lightsaber clips were painted in a dark gray and detailed with black. The pouch on the back was painted red and outlined with black. Now her skirt is made out of a clear vinyl material that is meant for covering furniture. You can find this stuff at Hobby Lobby. It comes in different grades of thickness. I use the thinnest kind. I would tell you what it is, but I don't remember. I would have to go to Hobby Lobby and look. They don't actually have it on the tissue paper that comes with it. Either way, I cut that to size, glued it on the belt piece, and painted it to match the torso. Now the sash coming off of her belt is made out of the same vinyl material as the skirt, and this was the hardest thing to paint on this whole figure. I hated painting this thing. I did so many attempts to get this thing to look right, and every time I fucked it up in some way. It was awful. I literally lost count of how many times I did this. I took some pictures of different attempts that I thought were good, but this is no accurate amount of how many times I did this thing. And the most frustrating thing of all was the solution was so simple and I could have avoided so much headache. Pretty much the paint I had mixed for that magenta color you see had somewhat dried up, so it was clumpy and hard to work with. So once I mixed up some new paint, I was able to do it in one go. But hey, I think it turned out pretty nice, even though I wanted to kill someone while making it. Now the legs were painted in dark gray. I painted the diamond pattern of her exposed skin on the side of her legs. I was only able to fit 4, there's supposed to be 6. The boots were painted in red and detailed with black, with a line of light red representing the angle of the boot. I painted on 3 out of the 5 buckles on her boots, couldn't fit them all on there. Now her head tails, or Montrol fucking Wikipedia, was made from an official Lego Ahsoka headpiece. Now how I made this look like this, I sanded the crap out of it. I removed a ton of plastic from the front of the piece. I sanded off the headband. I sanded the front of the head tails and the sides where the lines of the mold were. I also really flattened the back. Then using ProCreate, I sculpted the horns to be more accurate. I extended the head tails a bit on the front and the back, and I made her a new headband. Her Padawan braid that is attached to her headband is just made out of some string that was glued on. Now, I hate painting with white paint, but I finally found a white paint that's actually good to work with. I think I brought this up before with my Captain Rex figure I made. I painted her headpiece with Model Masters flat white. This stuff is amazing. The blue detail was painted on using my own mixed color. The headband and the braid were painted in olive green, and the headband was dry brushed in silver, and I added some blue and red and gold for the beads at the end of the braid. Her face was entirely painted by me. I think it turned out pretty good. Not perfect, but way better than the first one I did for my younger Ahsoka. Painting the eyes was difficult. I never paint eyes. I always use Lego's print, so it's hard to line those up and get them to be the correct shape, but I think I got a pretty nice pair here. Patterns on her face I painted in gray before painting them with the same Model Masters flat white. I decided to give her a more angry expression because in the later seasons of the show, she's a little more agitated.
For something I didn't do.
I based the head off of this Lego head for reference, which I think worked pretty well. That is my Ahsoka figure. I spent a lot of time on this one, so definitely let me know what you guys think of it in the comments. This is definitely my favorite look for the character, and I'm really glad with how this turned out, but I am regretting agreeing to making a second one of these for someone, which I am not looking forward to at all.
Remember when I said the Clone Wars made you look at things from the prequels not in the same way?
One of the biggest examples of that is Anakin. There is like a night and day difference between these two. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate Hayden Christensen as Anakin. I think he does a decent job, especially in episode 3. But I would be lying to you if I said I preferred this version of the character over the one we get in the show. Because, man, sometimes he is just not likable at all, and he can come off really, really creepy. Like, man, you better stop because you're making me want to chop off your limbs, throw you in a ditch, and light you on fire. Let's do a quick comparison of Anakin flirting with Padme in the movie versus Anakin being flirtatious in the show.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
With respect, how can I price the beauty of this slave when I look upon the magnificence of your highness, whose beauty would make the brightest star seem dull by comparison?
What did he say in her ear? Like, you're married, dude. Interestingly enough, the version we get in the show is heavily based off the opening scene of Revenge of the Sith, where Obi-Wan and Anakin are snooping around General Grievous' ship, having this fun little back and forth. It's translated perfectly into the show as this kind of good cop, bad cop duo, where Obi-Wan is calm, collective, and diplomatic.
Anakin's more like...
What? He was gonna blow up the ship.
He is a man of action with a lot of anger issues. But the thing that works for me more with him in the show compared to the movies is you actually see him being heroic. Anakin is constantly saving people in the show, even though he goes to these extreme lengths to achieve his goals. His intentions are good. He has this great morale with his troops, and you can tell that he genuinely cares about them. Him and Ahsoka have this older brother, younger sister dynamic, which is really fun to watch, because she'll act like a little shit, and he'll act like a little shit right back, pretty much stooping down to her level half the time. But he is also genuinely trying to teach her things, and you can tell he really cares about her. And all of that makes it so much more disturbing and chilling knowing what happens to the guy. Damn it, Star Wars, making me depressed thinking about your fictional characters again. Anyway, this was the last figure I finished for this group, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. His lightsaber is made out of a Lego lightsaber that I flipped upside down using the bottom end. I cut and sanded it, then I used ProCreate to sculpt all the detail to make it look like his lightsaber, such as all 8 grips at the bottom alongside the lightsaber clip. I sculpted the raised ring right above that with the ignition switch, sculpted both buttons on the front and the back of the emitter, and I added the 2 wings on the back. And then I painted it in Model Master Silver, and then I used black for the grip and some other details, used red for the button, and some gold for the ignition switch. The blade is just a Lego translucent blue bar sanded to a point. Using some ProCreate, I did sculpt these raised padded areas on his gloves. They are painted in a dark purple and detailed with black. As you can see on the right, I got all these lines running through this one, and I sealed that with Model Master's Lusterless Flat. Continuing on his right arm, we got his glove that covers his robotic hand. That was painted in the same dark purple. These raised clips are made from ProCreate, and those were painted in silver and gunmetal. I got all 3 of them there with the detail wrapping around onto the inside of the arm. On the left side, we got his other glove painted in that same purple. I sculpted on the communicator, painted that in dark gray, and did the highlights with gold. Then his sleeves were painted using apple barrel chocolate bar, which matched the color of his underrobes very well. I used the same vinyl material I used for Ahsoka's skirt to do the leather robes on his torso. Painted those purple and detailed them with black. I did glue on some little strips of fabric on the edges of his shoulders because his robes do overlap each other. Painted those and the torso in the same reddish brown I used for the arms and detailed that with black. I painted on his undershirt in a lighter brown and painted his exposed neck. The belt is a strip of fabric wrapping around, painted in the same reddish brown. The overbelt is made out of electrical tape, I know, so aggressive. The belt buckle, lightsaber clip, the 2 cylinders, the pouch on the front, and the 2 in the back were all made out of ProCreate. I painted the belt buckle in gunmetal, painted the lightsaber clip in dark gray. The 1 cylinder is painted silver, the other is in bronze. The pouches were painted in the same brown to match the belt, and all that was detailed with black. The underrobe skirt was made out of Cape Madness fabric, glued onto the belt piece, painted in that reddish brown. The overhang of the robes is that same vinyl material, glued on underneath the belt on the front and the back, both painted in that purple and detailed with black. The legs are painted in the same light brown I used for the undershirt. The boots, for whatever reason, took me a while to do. They were really annoying to make, but I painted them in that same reddish brown I used for the torso, detailed them with black, and the soles of the boots were painted in dark gray. The hairpiece started out as a Mutt Williams hairpiece that I sanded smooth, then using ProCreate, I sculpted what you see here. I think I was able to get the look I was going for. It's not perfect, it's a little rough here and there, but it gets the job done. I painted that in a couple different shades of brown. The face was made by using a Lego Clone Trooper head. I erased everything except the eyes. This is the exact same head I used to make my Season 1 Anakin, but this time around I decided to give him more of a stern look. I think it turned out really nice. Painted the eyebrows in the same brown I used for the hair. I used a mixed color for the detail of his chin, cheekbones, and the lines up by his eyebrows. The mouth was painted in black, and his scar by his right eye was painted in a dark red. So yeah, that about does it for Anakin. Let me know what you guys think of this figure in the comments. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. So yeah, that about does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Definitely let me know what you think of these figures in the comments down below. I've been working on these figures and this video for a while now, and I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I know I haven't really been active this year. You would think the fact this year was all about staying home, I would have gotten a lot done, but it feels like the exact opposite. I have gotten so little done this year, it's very depressing. Back in April, I started working for my uncle remodeling his house that him and his wife were going to move into. But now their son, who looks like Chris Pratt, is going to move into it, so they're making the house for him or something like that. I really don't know the storyline anymore, and I was helping with that from late April into early October. And when I wasn't doing that, I was at home taking care of our animals. And then when I wasn't doing that, me and Duke were driving 4 hours up north to help my parents with their business.
And let's just say I didn't get a lot of my own stuff done this year.
Any free time I had, I was working on figures, these 3 in particular, or I was so tired I just played video games with friends, being a degenerate piece of shit. Right, Dad? I wouldn't say this year was awful. Nothing bad happened to me, or anyone in my family, or anyone in my life.
That didn't age well at all when I wrote this.
It just didn't feel that productive. I mean, I did a lot of things, did a lot of stuff, but none of it felt like I accomplished anything. Hopefully next year will be better. I feel like I say that to myself every year, but it seems to be the same shit every year. But like I said, thank you so much for watching my stupid video where I talk about why I like a TV show so much and why I spent time making some of the characters into Lego figures. And I hope you had a decent year. Fuck it. I hope you had a good year. I can say that. Don't be like, you can't say you had a good year because nobody had a good year. Fuck you. I can hope you had a good year, you asshole. If you want to keep up with me, you definitely can. I got a Flickr, a Twitter, an Instagram I post on now and then. I'm thinking about getting rid of the Twitter because I never use it. I also got a Letterboxd, which I haven't used because I barely watched any movies this year. But you could follow me on that and see me complain about how loud a movie was.
Whatever you decide on doing, I appreciate it. Thank you yet again for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next video, which will probably be next year. Or not, I might die. I'm sick with COVID right now, so maybe you won't hear from me. I don't know.
Warning, by watching the